Welcome, dreamer. Tonight we return to the mystical world of Willowbrook, set in the year 1800 ACE, long before the stories told in the Magic Rabbit Chronicles and the Chronicles of Mythical Realms. This is a tale from the Before the Chronicles series, a time of secrets, courage, and forgotten magic. Beneath the quiet village streets lie ancient tunnels, hidden runes, and a mystery waiting to be uncovered. Let the soft music and calming narration guide you through this magical bedtime story as the enchanted forest sleeps under a moonlit sky. This is Willowbrook Adventure, Secrets Beneath the Village, written by Mr. A. Narrated by John Dio. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment to let us know what you think of the story. Your support means the world to us. Important update. Starting 2nd of July, I will be going in for a lung operation to remove a lump. Because of this, other audiobooks are currently on hold while I focus on recovery. I appreciate your patience and kindness during this time. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the secrets of Willowbrook carry you into a world of dreams. Willowbrook Adventure, Book 3, Secrets Beneath the Village. Chapter 1, Aftermath. The air in Willowbrook Village was thick with the scent of damp earth and fading smoke. Shadows stretched long across the cobbled paths as the sun dipped behind the treetops, its last rays casting an eerie glow over the rooftops. The dark mist that had descended from Tenebrous Rift had finally begun to clear, but its presence lingered like a sickness in the soil. For hours, the villagers had worked tirelessly, trying to recover from the previous night's horror. Fallen fences, scattered debris, and dried streaks of darkness where the mist had clung to the ground like a living thing marred the once peaceful village. Elder Matthias stood at the center of the village square, his staff planted firmly in the dirt. His sharp eyes scanned the weary faces around him. The mist is gone, but its echoes remain. A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Nora, the herbalist, knelt beside a small patch of withered flowers outside her cottage. She ran her fingers over the petals, now darkened and brittle, as if something had sapped their life away. She exchanged a worried glance with Jacob, the gardener, who stood nearby, his usual warmth replaced by unease. "Something has changed, Nora," Jacob muttered. "The land feels hollow." Then a sudden cry rang out from the eastern side of the village. "Come quick!" The villagers turned toward the great hall, where Leo, the young inventor, stood at the entrance, panting from exertion. His lantern swayed in his grip, casting flickering light over the uneven ground. "I was helping repair the foundation when we found something." He gulped, pointing at the earth near the old well. Matthias, Nora, and several others hurried over. In the dying light, they saw what Leo had uncovered: a gaping hole where the earth had caved in. The edges were jagged and unnatural, as though something had forced its way up from below. Freya, the healer, peered down into the darkness. "A tunnel," she whispered. The realization settled over them like a lead weight. Something had been buried beneath Willowbrook for centuries, and now it had been unearthed. A low rumble echoed through the village, distant thunder rolling in from the west. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and something else, something old, something forgotten. Lightning flashed across the sky. Night had fallen, and with it, a storm was coming. Matthias raised his lantern and peered into the newly discovered tunnel. The dim glow barely illuminated the darkness below, revealing slick stone walls lined with runes etched into the rock. The markings pulsed faintly, as if they had been waiting for centuries to be uncovered. Leo, still catching his breath, swallowed hard. I don't think this was meant to be found. The storm above grew louder, wind whipping through the trees. The village square's torches flickered wildly, struggling against the rising gusts. The villagers huddled closer, torn between curiosity and fear. Beth, the storyteller, traced her fingers over one of the runes on the edge of the tunnel. These symbols, I've seen them before, in the old texts of the library. Abigail, the librarian, nodded. Yes, they match the markings in the Hall of Prophecy. Matthias turned to the group. This discovery is no accident. The mist may be gone, but something deeper has stirred. We must explore it before we lose the chance. The villagers exchanged nervous glances. The tunnel loomed before them, its shadowy depths calling to the unknown. Finally, Freya, Gareth, Leo, Nora, and Matthias stepped forward. "We'll go down," Matthias declared. With ropes secured and torches lit, the small group prepared for their descent into the darkness below. The first footsteps echoed as they climbed carefully down the stone-carved steps. The air inside the tunnel was thick and stale, untouched by time. Their torches cast flickering shadows, revealing carvings along the walls, ancient depictions of creatures, battles, and symbols of a long-forgotten civilization. Freya whispered, "What is this place?" Matthias ran his fingers along a partially eroded inscription and muttered, "The origins of Willowbrook." But before he could continue, a sudden roar of thunder cracked above. The storm had fully arrived. Lightning illuminated the tunnel for a brief moment, and in that flash, something moved deep within the shadows. A distant, whispering voice drifted through the air. They were not alone. The sky shuddered with a deafening crack, lightning splintering across the heavens like jagged veins of fire. A moment later, the storm unleashed its fury. Heavy raindrops pelted the village, hammering against rooftops and splashing into the already damp earth. Wind howled through the trees, rattling shutters and threatening to tear the torches from their iron sconces. The villagers, still gathered around the collapsed tunnel entrance, staggered backward as a sudden gust of wind sent loose dirt and pebbles tumbling into the dark chasm below. "We can't stay out here," Gareth bellowed over the roar of the storm, shielding his face from the onslaught of rain. Elder Matthias, gripping his staff tightly, turned toward the others. "The Great Hall. It's the safest place during a storm." Lightning flared again, illuminating the ancient symbols on the exposed walls of the tunnel. For the briefest of moments, the runic carvings flickered, as if responding to the storm. Then just as quickly, the light faded, and the tunnel was swallowed by darkness once more. A low, distant rumbling came from below. No one dared speak of it. Instead, they ran. The village square had turned into a chaotic mess of mud and flowing water, the rain falling in relentless sheets. Children shrieked, clutching their parents as they dashed for cover, while others rushed to secure their animals, leading them into the larger barns and sheds. Nora and Freya struggled to keep up with Matthias as they fought against the wind, their cloaks whipping wildly behind them. The herbalist's cottage was too small, the inn was already full, and the village homes wouldn't withstand the worst of the storm. Only one place could offer true protection. The Great Hall, a massive stone structure at the heart of Willowbrook, had withstood generations of storms, floods, and bitter winters. It was built long before anyone in the village was born, and some whispered that its foundations were older than Willowbrook itself. Tonight, it would be their refuge. As soon as they reached the doors, Gareth and Jacob shoved them open against the wind. A warm glow spilled out from inside, the great hearth already lit. Villagers poured in, shaking off their drenched cloaks, the sound of dripping water and heavy breathing filling the chamber. The massive wooden beams overhead creaked as the wind battered the walls. Beth, the village storyteller, helped usher the last few people inside before slamming the doors shut. For a moment, everyone stood still, listening. Outside, the storm raged, the wind screaming as it tore through the trees. Hail clattered against the roof, and the very ground seemed to tremble beneath their feet. But within the great hall, there was warmth, there was light, and there was the unsettling silence of unanswered questions. Freya squeezed the water from her braid, glancing at the others. "That was no ordinary storm," she murmured. Nora nodded, her brows furrowed. "I felt it too, something unnatural in the air." Matthias, sitting near the fire, remained quiet. He had seen many storms in his lifetime, but never one that carried whispers in the wind. Beth spoke first. The tunnel, the symbols, they reacted to the lightning. Abigail, the librarian, looked up sharply. "I saw it too. It wasn't a trick of the light." Leo, sitting cross-legged on the stone floor, wiped his glasses dry. If the runes responded to the storm, then... He hesitated, swallowing hard. What if we weren't supposed to open that tunnel? A heavy silence settled over them. Then, from outside, boom, a deafening thunderclap shook the very foundations of the great hall, and beneath them, from deep within the earth, there was a sound, a low, resonant groan, like something shifting in the dark, something awakening. Chapter 2. Echoes from Below. The storm had spent the night howling through the valley, rattling every door and window in Willowbrook. Now, as dawn crept over the horizon, a heavy mist clung to the ground, winding its way through the village like silent ghosts of the night before. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and churned earth. Leaves and debris littered the cobblestone paths, and several rooftops bore the scars of the storm's wrath: loose shingles, broken shutters, and scattered branches. The once sturdy wooden fence near the village square had collapsed entirely, the wind having torn it from its posts. For a moment, the village was still. Then the great hall's doors creaked open. Elder Matthias stepped out first, his breath visible in the crisp morning air. His old bones ached from the long night spent on the hard wooden floor, but something else sat heavy in his chest, an unease that had not faded with the storm. The others followed, stepping onto the soaked ground with wary eyes. Nora wrapped her cloak tighter around herself, shivering as she took in the damage. "We've seen storms before," she muttered, "but never like that." Freya, still exhausted from tending to frightened villagers all night, crouched to inspect the deep gouges in the soil near the great hall's entrance. The wind alone didn't do this. Leo adjusted his glasses, staring out toward the collapsed tunnel entrance. The storm had washed away more of the dirt, revealing even more of the runes carved into the stone beneath Willowbrook. "It's even deeper than we thought," he murmured. The villagers slowly gathered, each of them drawn to the exposed tunnel, where the storm had carved away even more of the earth. The opening now yawned wide enough for 3 people to stand side by side. The runes, once faint, seemed sharper, as if freshly cut. And worse, there were new markings, symbols none of them had seen the night before. Abigail, the librarian, traced the unfamiliar lines with trembling fingers. These weren't here yesterday. A hush fell over the group. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed a sharp, piercing sound that echoed through the quiet morning. Matthias exhaled slowly. It wasn't just the storm that changed the village last night. Something beneath them had changed, too. With the sun finally piercing through the mist, the villagers set to work assessing the damage and discussing what to do next. Jacob and Gareth set out to repair the fences, while Henry, the baker, and Isla, the innkeeper, worked to ensure the food stores were intact. But Matthias, Freya, Nora, Leo, Beth, and Abigail stayed behind at the tunnel entrance. "We need to see how far this goes," Leo said, already adjusting the straps of his satchel, filled with parchment and charcoal for sketches. Beth, ever the storyteller, nodded. "And we need to understand what these runes are saying." Matthias hesitated, then sighed. "We will go carefully. No one enters alone." With fresh torches lit and nervous anticipation thick in the air, the group descended into the tunnel, stepping deeper into the mysteries buried beneath Willowbrook. And as they walked, somewhere beyond the edge of the village, something watched from the shadows. The air grew colder as Matthias and the others descended into the tunnel. The flickering light of their torches barely pierced the dense darkness, revealing uneven stone walls covered in runes and carvings that seemed to twist and change when viewed from different angles. Freya shivered. "It feels unnatural down here." Leo trailed a hand over the nearest rune, his brow furrowing. The storm didn't just reveal this place, it woke it up. They pressed on, the only sounds their cautious footsteps and the distant drip of water echoing from somewhere deeper within. The tunnel sloped downward, winding further beneath Willowbrook, its origins lost to time. Then they saw it. The passage opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. The air here was stagnant, thick with an ancient presence. But what caught their attention was not the size of the space. It was the monolithic stone door at the far end. The massive slab of blackened stone stood at least twice Matthias's height, its surface carved with even more glowing runes. The markings pulsed faintly, as if alive, reacting to their presence. Beth stepped forward, her fingers trailing over an inscription near the edge of the door. "This isn't just any entrance," she whispered. "This is a seal." Leo swallowed hard. Sealing what? Abigail, holding a worn journal she had brought from the village archives, flipped through its pages. Some of these runes matched the old legends, the ones about the Shadow War. Matthias, silent until now, stepped closer, his eyes tracing the door's inscriptions. If this was sealed, someone did it for a reason. Freya exhaled, and now the storm may have started undoing it. The group exchanged uneasy glances, and then a soft rumble vibrated through the chamber, sending small pebbles tumbling from the walls. The door's runes flared, a surge of deep blue light pulsing outward. Something shifted behind the stone, something alive. The echo of a voice. A low whisper drifted through the chamber, not in any language they knew, yet one they all understood. "The seal weakens." Freya's breath hitched. "Did you hear that?" Beth clutched her journal tighter. "It wasn't just me." The voice, ancient and heavy with sorrow, spoke again. "You have awakened what sleeps beneath." Leo stepped back, his hands shaking. "We need to leave." Matthias nodded grimly, pulling his torch closer. "We're not ready for this. We regroup. We study these runes." A deep groan echoed from behind the door. A sound like something shifting, something waiting. A final whisper came, softer than before, yet carrying a weight that sent chills through their bones. "Not all that is buried should be found." And then, silence. No one spoke as they hurried back up the tunnel, their breaths shallow, their footsteps quick. When they finally emerged into the morning light, the storm clouds had cleared, but the village still bore the scars of the night before. Matthias turned back toward the tunnel entrance. The door was still sealed for now, but something inside was awake. The group had barely recovered from their experience inside the tunnel when the weight of their discovery settled over them. Matthias, Abigail, Beth, Freya, Nora, and Leo gathered in the great hall, their boots still damp from the storm. The fire in the hearth flickered, casting shadows on the aged wooden beams overhead. Despite the warmth, a chill hung in the air, as if the storm had left something behind, something unseen, lingering just beneath the surface. The book Abigail held, a journal from the village archives, was ancient. The leather-bound cover was cracked, its pages yellowed with time. As she carefully turned the pages, the inked runes and faded sketches inside revealed fragments of a history long forgotten. Before Willowbrook, there was another village, Abigail murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. A settlement that stood here long before our time, long before the first recorded history of this land. Beth leaned closer, her fingers trailing over the worn edges of the page. You mean Willowbrook wasn't the first? Abigail shook her head. No, this land was home to something else. But whatever was here before, it didn't survive. Leo adjusted his glasses. You mean it was abandoned? Abigail's lips tightened. No. She turned another page, revealing a charcoal sketch of a village eerily similar to their own. Houses, farms, a town square. It all looked familiar. But the next sketch showed something very different. A massive black door, just like the one they had seen in the tunnel, half buried in the earth, beneath the ruins of the lost village. It was buried, she whispered. The Shadow War in the lost village, Freya, frowned. What could cause an entire village to be buried? Beth hesitated before speaking. The Shadow War. Everyone turned to her. Beth, the village storyteller, had spent years studying the old tales. But this was different. These were no ordinary legends passed down by word of mouth. These were records. The Shadow War wasn't just a battle between kingdoms, Beth explained. It was something far older, something unnatural. The stories say that creatures of darkness and void once roamed this land, and that the people who lived here long ago tried to stop them. Matthias tapped his fingers against the table. You're saying this land was part of that war? Abigail turned to the next passage in the journal, reading aloud. The village fell. The shadows consumed the streets. The earth itself trembled, and we knew we could not win. The survivors sealed the darkness below and fled, leaving this place to time. A heavy silence filled the room. If this is true, Nora whispered, then what exactly did they seal down there? Leo swallowed. And what happens if the seal is broken? Matthias took the journal and read the final passage, written in uneven, frantic handwriting. We have sealed the great door, but it will not hold forever. The runes weaken when the storms rise. If the door ever opens, may those who find it know. Some things are never meant to wake. A distant rumble vibrated beneath their feet. It was soft, barely noticeable, but it was there. Freya's breath caught. That wasn't thunder. Leo gripped the edge of the table. Something is shifting down there. Matthias exhaled sharply. Then we don't have much time. The great hall creaked as another gust of wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The storm may have passed, but something far worse was stirring beneath their feet. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Wind. The morning after the storm should have brought peace to Willowbrook. Instead, it brought something else. The mist had returned. It wasn't the kind that rolled in naturally from the hills or the river. This mist had a presence, a will. It moved with purpose, weaving through the streets of the village like a silent predator. Matthias stood at the village square, his hands tightening around his staff. as he watched the fog seep from the trees at the forest's edge. The villagers whispered amongst themselves, their unease growing by the second. Nora stepped beside him. "The Whisping Veil, it's back." Freya swallowed hard. "I thought we were done with it." "So did I," Matthias murmured. The storm had uncovered the ancient tunnels and symbols, and now the veil had returned, almost as if it had been summoned, or worse, it had been waiting. A presence within the mist. At first, the mist was just a shroud of gray, thick and unnatural, but then something changed. The shadows within the fog shifted. Beth took a step back. "Did you see that?" Freya turned sharply. "See what?" Beth pointed toward the tree line. At first it was barely visible, just a darker patch within the mist, almost like a trick of the light. But then, it moved. Two glowing silver eyes blinked within the fog, watching them from afar. A shape loomed behind the mist, tall, wolf-like, but wrong. Ray. His form was distorted, his features shifting like he wasn't entirely here, but not entirely gone either. And then, the whispers began. At first it was just the wind, carrying a low hum through the trees. But as the mist rolled deeper into the village, the hum became voices. "Do you hear them?" Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The others nodded, their faces pale. The voices were not of this world. Then came the first signs of its influence. Jacob, the village gardener, stood frozen in the middle of the square. His hands twitched at his sides, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Nora rushed toward him. "Jacob, what's wrong?" He didn't respond. His eyes were blank, staring through the mist as if seeing something far away. Then his lips parted, and a whisper escaped. But it was not his voice. "The seal weakens. The past will rise again." The words crawled through the air, spoken in a language no one had uttered for centuries. Jacob suddenly gasped, stumbling back as if waking from a nightmare. He clutched his chest. "I don't know what happened. I felt something inside me." Freya grabbed his shoulders. "Jacob, what did you see?" He shook his head. "It wasn't me. It was..." His words died on his lips. The crows watching from the rooftops let out a shrill, unnatural cry. The Whisping Veil swirled, shifting toward the tunnels, and deep beneath the village, something rumbled. Matthias turned to the others, his expression dark. "We need to go back down there." Beth clenched her fists. If Ray is influencing the mist, that means he's tied to whatever's beneath Willowbrook. Leo adjusted his satchel. "We need to understand what's behind that door." Abigail, flipping through the ancient journal, pointed to a passage. "The runes we found, some of them might be protective seals, but if they're breaking..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Matthias exhaled. "Then we don't have much time." With their torches lit once more, the group descended into the tunnels, stepping further into the darkness, into the unknown. And behind them, the Whisping Veil followed. The flickering torchlight cast long shadows along the damp stone walls as the group descended into the tunnels once more. The air felt thicker than before, heavy with something unseen, not just the dampness of the earth, but an unnatural weight. Freya pressed a hand against the cold stone, her fingers brushing over the etched runes glowing faintly along the walls. The carvings seemed clearer than before, as if the storm, the mist. Rai's presence had reawakened them. They weren't this bright yesterday, she murmured. Leo, walking beside her, adjusted his glasses. Or maybe, "They know we're coming back." The words sent a shiver through the group. Ahead, Matthias led the way, his steps careful as the tunnel sloped deeper underground. The eerie glow of the runes pulsed with each step they took, guiding them, or was it warning them? The group finally reached the vast chamber they had uncovered the day before. The massive black stone door still loomed at the far end, covered in glowing symbols, its surface humming with an unseen force. But something had changed. Beth pointed to the ground near the entrance. That wasn't there before. The others followed her gaze. A fresh marking had appeared on the floor. It was a spiral, drawn with what looked like blackened ash, its shape precise and deliberate. In its center, a single rune pulsed faintly, different from the others. "Someone else has been down here," Abigail whispered. Matthias frowned, or something. Freya knelt beside the marking, tracing it lightly with her fingertip. The moment she did, a rush of air swept through the chamber. The torches flickered violently, and for a split second, all light vanished. The runes on the walls flashed bright, and then darkened. Then a voice echoed through the tunnel. "You seek what was buried." The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, deep and hollow, like it had been waiting for centuries to be heard. Freya stumbled back, her breath shallow. "Did everyone hear that?" Leo nodded slowly, his face pale. "We're not alone down here." The Whisping Veil had followed them, and now something else had awakened in the tunnels. Back in the village, the mist had deepened, curling through the streets in thick waves. The crows on the rooftops no longer moved. They simply sat, staring at nothing, as if entranced. A few villagers began to change. Jacob, still shaken from his earlier vision, wandered through the square, his eyes unfocused, lips moving in silent whispers. Ava, one of the younger villagers, sat on the steps of the great hall, drawing symbols into the dirt, with her finger symbols none of them had ever seen before. Inside the bakery, Henry, the baker, was still kneading dough. But he hadn't stopped for hours. His hands moved in an endless rhythm, his eyes vacant. "Henry?" Isla, the innkeeper, stepped inside, waving a hand in front of his face. No response. But as she turned to leave, Henry spoke. "It is waking." Isla's blood ran cold. Freya's heartbeat pounded in her ears as the last echo of the voice faded into silence. The new rune, pulsing faintly in the spiral drawn on the ground, seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Matthias, steadying himself, knelt beside it. His fingers traced the carved lines, feeling an unsettling warmth beneath his touch. The rune was different from the others. It didn't simply glow. It shifted, its edges moving as if resisting definition. "This isn't just a marking," Beth whispered, gripping the ancient journal. "It's a key." Abigail flipped through the brittle pages, eyes scanning feverishly, until she found a matching symbol deep in the book's worn text. "Here," she gasped, turning the book for the others to see. The passage was written in an ancient dialect, barely legible, but one line stood out among the rest. "The key is the memory is the door." Leo frowned. "That doesn't make sense. A memory? A door?" Matthias exhaled sharply. "It means this rune isn't something to be unlocked with force." He paused, the weight of his words settling over them. "It must be remembered." As soon as he spoke, the rune flashed, and the air around them shifted. A vision of the lost village. The tunnel was gone. For a terrifying moment, it felt as though they had fallen into nothingness. Then they were somewhere else. Freya gasped. The chamber had vanished, replaced by a vast open village, eerily similar to Willowbrook, yet older, grander. The sky above them was twilight purple, streaked with golden light. The air smelled of burning incense and damp earth. Around them, people moved, their robes flowing as they walked the streets of a settlement long forgotten. "Is this the lost village?" Leo whispered, turning in awe. Matthias's grip on his staff tightened. "Number this is a memory of it." Beth's eyes wide. The rune, it showed us a piece of the past. They watched as villagers gathered in the square, their faces anxious, tense. At the heart of the settlement stood the same great stone door, its carvings fresh, its runes fully intact. And standing before it was a figure wrapped in shadows. Not a stranger. Ray. Or rather, the wolf he used to be. Ray stood tall, his silver eyes burning bright, his fur dark and untouched by the Whisping Veil. He was not yet lost to the corruption, but something was wrong. A council of elders and warriors stood before him, speaking in the forgotten tongue of the village. Though their voices were distant, the group understood every word. "It is too dangerous," one elder warned. "The veil cannot be controlled. We must seal it away," another said. "Bury it beneath the earth before it consumes us all." But Ray stepped forward, his voice firm, unwavering. "You do not understand," he growled. "We can use it. We can shape it into power." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Ray," one of the elders said gravely, "the veil is not meant to serve. It is meant to be forgotten." His silver eyes flashed with defiance. "Then you are all fools." The vision shuddered, flickering like candlelight. The village erupted into chaos. Fire, shouting, a battle waged in the streets. Ray's once loyal pack turned on him, their howls lost in the storm as they tried to stop the darkness from spreading. But it was too late. The veil burst forth, swallowing the village in waves of twisting mist. The great door was sealed, the runes carved deep into the stone, locking the darkness away. And the last thing they saw, Ray disappearing into the mist, lost, consumed, becoming something else. The memory fractured. Then, the group gasped as they snapped back into reality. They were on the floor of the chamber, the rune now faded beneath them. The mist from the tunnel's entrance curled like tendrils of smoke, whispering in their ears. Ray was there, Beth murmured. He was the reason this happened. Not just that, Leo whispered. He wanted to use the Whisping Veil, and when he lost control... Abigail closed the journal, her hands shaking. They had to bury the village to stop him. Matthias's voice was heavy, and now that seal is breaking. Another rumble shook the tunnels. The black stone door shuddered. A deep guttural sound echoed from behind it. No longer whispers, but something waking, something angry. Matthias turned to the others. "We need to get out of here, now." The Whisping Veil slithered forward, curling along the walls, drawn toward them. Freya stumbled to her feet. "It knows we're here." The torchlight flickered violently. The air grew colder. Then the door began to open. Chapter 4. Voices from the Past. The Awakening of Ray. The ground shook beneath them. The great black stone door groaned, its runes flaring violently, flickering between light and darkness. The mist curling along the tunnel walls pulsed in sync with the door's movement, as though it was breathing, as though something behind it was breathing. Then from the deep abyss beyond the door, a voice slithered into the air, twisted, broken, filled with rage and decay. "You should not have come." The sound sent a wave of nausea through Freya's body. It was not a voice that belonged in this world. It echoed strangely, layered upon itself not one voice, but many, fractured and raw, like something that had tried to speak for centuries, but had long since forgotten how. Beth covered her ears, squeezing her eyes shut. That's not him anymore. She gasped. That's not just Ray. Leo staggered backward, clutching his chest as an overwhelming sense of dread clawed its way up his throat. Matthias, his old heart pounding, steadied himself. No, he said grimly. That is what's left of him. A clawed shadow scraped against the stone door from the other side. The room grew colder, the torches dimmed, and then the door cracked open. The mist poured through the widening gap, filling the chamber like a flood. But it was not empty mist. Something was inside it. Something huge. Something wrong. A monstrous form emerged, shifting between shadow and flesh, its body unstable, flickering, like reality itself rejected its existence. His once majestic silver fur was charred, torn apart in places where the mist pulsed beneath his skin, like it was part of him now, twisting through his veins. His claws scraped the stone, jagged and uneven, cracked from battles lost to time. And his eyes, those silver eyes, now split and burning with unnatural light, they were filled with something beyond anger, beyond hatred. It was torment. It was hunger. It was a creature that should have died long ago, but had been forced to exist beyond its time. When Ray spoke, his voice was no longer his own. You left me to rot. The words dragged, broken and disjointed, like they had been pieced together from the voices of many creatures, layered and twisted into something barely recognizable as speech. Beth's breath hitched. Ray, we. The veil inside him lashed outward. The mist slammed into the walls, cracking stone, sending dust and debris raining down upon them. I remember you, Ray roared, his voice so powerful that it rattled their bones. His massive, shadow-corrupted form lurched forward, claws scraping the stone, each movement unnatural, like he was breaking himself apart just to move. I remember the screams, the fire, the betrayal. His voice fractured, breaking into a cacophony of whispers and howls, as if thousands of voices existed within him, trapped. And now, I will remake this place in shadow. Run or die. Matthias didn't hesitate. Run! The group turned and bolted, just as Ray lunged his claws, slamming into the ground where they had stood, cracking the stone like glass. The tunnel shook violently, the runes along the walls flaring and sparking, reacting violently to Ray's unnatural presence. You cannot hide from me. His voice broke apart mid-scream, splintering into a horrifying chorus of voices, some pleading, some laughing, some weeping. Beth stumbled as the mist lashed at her ankles, pulling her toward the darkness. Beth! Freya grabbed her, yanking her free. The tunnel ahead collapsed, forcing them into a side passage, stumbling blindly into the dark. Ray's laughter followed them. Run, 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 but I will always find you. Chapter 5. Veiled Memories. The earth trembled as Ray's corrupted form lurched after them, his jagged claws scraping the stone with a sound that set their teeth on edge. The tunnel behind them collapsed, sending a shockwave through the cavern, but it did not stop him. The Whisping Veil surged forward, twisting around the edges of the corridor, dragging at their feet as if trying to consume them. Keep running, Matthias shouted. Their lungs burned as they sprinted through the darkness, the torches in their hands flickering wildly, as if struggling to stay lit in Ray's unnatural presence. His laughter, or what remained of it, followed them, a hideous, fractured symphony of voices, all broken and twisted into something that no longer belonged to a single creature. You run like they did. Ray's voice shattered, switching between different tones. Some words were growled, some were whispered like a child, others were screamed in rage. You run, but the dark always finds you. The tunnel twisted suddenly, forcing the group to split. Beth, Freya, and Abigail took the left path, while Matthias, Leo, and Nora took the right. "No, stay together," Matthias yelled, but the stone buckled, forcing them apart. Ray's burning silver eyes flickered between the two corridors, and then he went left. Beth, Freya, and Abigail staggered to a halt, panting, their hearts hammering in their chests. The tunnel widened, leading into a vast cavern filled with carved stone pillars. But something wasn't right. The air was wrong cold, yet charged with something ancient. Freya held up her torch. The flames flickered violently, revealing a massive carving on the wall. "Oh no," Abigail whispered. Beth swallowed hard as she traced the worn carvings. It was a mural one depicting the fall of the lost village. Ray was at its center, but this was not the wolf they once knew. This was the beginning of the corruption, his body wrapped in tendrils of the Whisping Veil, his silver eyes starting to split apart. His stance no longer noble, but twisted, monstrous. Beneath him, the villagers fell to darkness, their bodies breaking, their faces twisting into screaming horrors. The last section of the carving showed something even worse, the door they had just unlocked and what lay behind it. Beth's breath hitched. Oh, this wasn't just a prison for Ray. Abigail's voice shook. It was a prison for something worse. Then the torches all went out, and Ray was there. "Did you find what you were looking for?" His ruined voice oozed from the darkness, coming from every direction. The torchlight flickered back to life, revealing Ray inches away from Beth's face. She screamed. Matthias, Leo, and Nora ran blindly through the narrowing tunnel, the ceiling shaking above them. Leo gritted his teeth. "He went after them," Matthias cursed. "We can't fight him like this. We need to find something, anything, to help." The tunnel abruptly dropped into an open space, and they skidded to a stop. Before them was a hidden chamber, one that had been untouched for centuries. At its center stood a massive stone pedestal covered in ancient runes. Upon it rested a single artifact, a silver amulet glowing faintly with protective magic. Nora hesitated. "What is that?" Matthias approached, his fingers tingling the moment they neared the surface of the amulet. "This," he whispered, staring at the worn inscriptions. This was Ray's. Leo's breath caught. "Before he was corrupted?" Matthias nodded. This was what bound him to the guardians of the lost village, a mark of his honor. But it was more than that. The moment he lifted it, the air shifted violently, the runes around them blazing to life. And for the first time, the Whisping Veil recoiled. Leo's eyes widened. "It's a weapon against him." Matthias gritted his teeth, closing his fingers around the amulet. "Then let's end this." Chapter 6. Darkness Rising. The scream echoed through the cavern like a blade through silence. Beth's cry was cut short as Ray's shadowy form surged forward. His mist-wreathed claws swiped through the darkness, tearing stone from the wall where she had just stood. Freya dragged Beth aside, her heart thundering in her chest. "Back! This way!" Abigail shouted, waving her torch, the flame sputtering against the thickening fog. But Ray didn't pursue. Not yet. He stood still, his corrupted form rising above them, mist twisting like chains from his limbs. His eyes glowed like shattered stars, and for a moment, his breath hitched, like something within was holding him back. A low growl rumbled from deep inside his chest, and then a voice, not his own. "She stirs." Ray's head snapped back violently, a cry of pain breaking from his throat as the Whisping Veil surged around him. His body convulsed, his form distorting, as if fighting something deeper, older, more dangerous than himself. Freya grabbed Beth's hand. "Now, while he's distracted." The three women sprinted toward a narrow passage at the edge of the chamber, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Behind them, Ray roared a sound no longer wolf, but something far more primal. The chamber shook, ancient stones falling from above. Meanwhile, Matthias held the glowing silver amulet high as he and the others ran. The tunnels pulsed with energy, reacting to the relic. The light wasn't just keeping the veil back, it was pulling something forward. "I feel it," Leo said breathlessly. "Something's awake beneath all of this." "Not just awake," Matthias muttered. "Watching." A sudden tremor buckled the floor ahead of them, sending them tumbling. A deafening crack split the air, and a new tunnel split open before them, revealing a staircase carved in jagged spirals, leading downward. Nora stood, wiping blood from her brow. "That wasn't here before." "No," Matthias said, staring into the abyss below. "It was hidden until now." They looked at one another, unsure. Then deep beneath them, a sound echoed. Not a growl, not a whisper, a pulse, a heartbeat. Ancient, powerful, waiting. Matthias descended first. Each step down the spiral staircase resonated like thunder in his bones. The silver amulet glowed brighter the further they went, casting long shadows on the walls, etched with runes neither Nora nor Leo could recognize. The air grew colder, dense, like a breath held for centuries. Leo whispered, "We're going somewhere no one has been, ever." "No," Matthias replied. "Someone's been here, long ago, but they never came back." At the bottom, they reached a narrow antechamber carved from obsidian black stone. The walls pulsed faintly, like veins of magic running through rock. At its center stood a massive circular seal different from the others. The runes were deeper here, glowing with hues of blue and silver, and etched in concentric circles that spiraled inward to a symbol none of them had ever seen before. The amulet in Matthias's hand began to vibrate. Leo stepped forward, slowly. "That symbol, it's not in the archives. It's not from the village," Matthias said. "It's older." Nora knelt beside the seal, brushing her fingers across the outermost runes. "This feels alive." A soft hum filled the chamber, gentle, beckoning, then a low growl. Not Ray, not the veil, something else, something beneath the seal. The heartbeat returned louder now, closer. The air shimmered above the stone as if heat were rising from it, and for just a moment, they heard the unmistakable sound of wings unfolding in the dark. Back in the twisting tunnels above, Beth, Freya, and Abigail emerged from the narrow passage into a new corridor, breathless and scraped. "Where are we now?" Beth gasped, wiping blood from her cheek. Freya held her torch high, revealing a series of murals along the wall, images of beasts with wings and glowing eyes. Dragons. But unlike the terrifying creatures from myth, these dragons were protectors, guardians of light, battling a great shadow. Abigail's voice trembled. These weren't in any of the known runes. Beth stepped closer to one carving that showed a radiant dragon standing between a village and a storm of shadows. Its name was almost worn away, but the last few letters remained. Fire. Freya froze. Sapphire? They exchanged glances. "Maybe," Beth whispered, her voice low, "or maybe that's what it becomes." Behind them, a gust of wind howled down the corridor, followed by heavy footsteps. Ray was still coming, and whatever was sealed beneath Willowbrook might be their only hope. The chamber darkened as the humming deepened, not in sound, but in feeling. The magic in the air pressed against Matthias's skin like a memory trying to break free. Nora stepped beside him, eyes wide. "This isn't a prison." Leo nodded slowly. "It's a cradle." Matthias knelt, placing the amulet on the center of the seal. The instant it touched the stone, every rune in the chamber blazed with silvery light. A wind erupted from the ground, howling upward, not destructive, but protective, warm, powerful, ancient, and then a voice. It echoed not from the walls, but inside their minds. The Guardian sleeps. Nora staggered, the presence nearly overwhelming. What was that? Leo dropped to one knee, clutching his head. It's not hostile. It's warning us. Matthias's eyes widened, not warning us away, warning us to prepare. The seal pulsed once more, this time slower, deeper like the heartbeat of a slumbering god. Then just as suddenly, the glow faded, and the chamber returned to stillness. The amulet, now dim again, trembled in Matthias's hand. "We're not the first to come here," he said, his voice low, "but we might be the last." Beth ran a hand across the mural again, her fingers trailing the faint lines of the dragon's form. "Sapphire," she whispered. The name tasted like memory, like hope barely remembered. Freya, panting, leaned against the wall. If this dragon was sealed down here, why? Abigail answered without looking up. Maybe not to protect us from it, but to protect it from Ray. A low groan echoed behind them, the sound of twisted claws against stone. Ray was close. Beth turned sharply, her voice firm. "We can't outrun him again." Freya gritted her teeth. "Then we lead him into the deeper chamber, toward the others." "You want to trap him?" Abigail asked. "No," Freya said, already moving. "I want him to see what he's afraid of." Minutes later, the three groups collided in the chamber of the seal. Torches flared as they rushed in from different sides, eyes wide with disbelief and relief. "Beth," Matthias called. "You're all right." "Barely," she panted. "He's behind us." Leo turned. "He followed you?" A sound like 1,000 knives dragging across stone split the air. "I never left." The tunnel behind them bloomed with shadow as Ray emerged, the Whisping Veil writhing around him like a cloak of nightmares. His form filled the archway, eyes locked on the glowing seal. But something was different. He paused. The veil recoiled, and Ray took a step back. "No," he hissed, voice cracking. "Not again, not here." Matthias raised the amulet high. "You remember this?" Ray roared, lunging forward, but the seal ignited, not with light, with flame. A jet of blue fire erupted upward from the center of the seal, striking the ceiling with a thunderous roar. The ground shook. The runes burned brighter than ever, and from the depths below, something shifted. Scales scraped stone. A breath rumbled. A massive ancient eye blinked behind the veil of magic. Still hidden, still unnamed, but awake. Sapphire was stirring. Ray stumbled backward, his claws dragging deep gouges into the stone floor as the flames spiraled higher around the seal. The glow of the runes reflected in his fractured eyes. Eyes that once held wisdom, now twisted by fear and fury. "No," he snarled, voice warping between 1,000 tongues. "She cannot wake." The Whisping Veil whipped around him, tendrils lashing wildly at the flames, but they couldn't touch them. The fire was not of this world. It was sacred, ancient, untouchable by shadow. Beth stepped forward, breathless. "He's afraid." Freya clenched her fist. "Good." Ray's body flickered, his shape unraveling, as if even his form could no longer withstand the power awakening in this place. "You sealed me," he howled. "You turned her against me." Matthias held the amulet high again, its light now pulsing in sync with the seal. "We didn't turn anyone," he said. "You chose darkness. You chose this path." Ray growled low, more beast than wolf. Then he stopped. A sound rose beneath them. Not fire, not stone. A voice, software powerful, feminine. "Enough." Ray flinched. For the briefest moment, The air was still. Then a shockwave burst outward from the seal, pure blue light washing over the chamber. The Whisping Veil shrieked as if burned, recoiling into itself. Ray staggered back, roaring in pain, before vanishing into the tunnel's shadows, his form pulled away by the mist. The silence that followed was almost as deafening as his retreat. The flames from the seal died down, leaving behind a faint glow and a soft warmth that filled the chamber. The villagers stood frozen, wide-eyed, hearts pounding. Beth was the first to speak. What just happened?" Matthias turned to face the group, the amulet still glowing faintly in his hand. "Something ancient is waking," he said. "A guardian long forgotten, a power Ray fears." Leo adjusted his glasses, awe in his voice. "She spoke to us." Nora nodded. "She protected us." The runes on the seal dimmed slowly, but the warmth remained, a silent promise. They did not yet know her name. They didn't yet know her purpose, but they knew one thing with certainty. They were no longer alone. Chapter 7. Refuge Underground. The heavy silence after Ray's retreat lingered like a mist none of them could shake. Torches crackled quietly along the edges of the chamber, casting long, restless shadows against the stone walls. The silver glow from the ancient seal pulsed faintly, a steady heartbeat beneath their feet, a reminder that they were not alone anymore. Matthias leaned heavily on his staff, his face drawn but resolute. Around him, the others gathered: Beth, Freya, Abigail, Leo, Nora. Their clothes were torn, their faces weary, but their eyes burned with a new fire, a fire of hope. "We can't return to the surface yet," Matthias said finally, his voice low. "Not while Ray prowls the village." Beth nodded, clutching the old journal tighter against her chest. "The mist is still thick up there. He will be watching, waiting." Freya rubbed her arms against the damp chill that crept along the stone. "We need somewhere safe, somewhere to regroup, to plan." Leo adjusted his satchel and pointed toward a tunnel branching off the main chamber. "There's more beyond here. I saw it when we arrived." Nora frowned. "More tunnels? Deeper underground?" Matthias looked at the glowing seal behind them. If the ancients built this, they may have built more. A rumble echoed far above, as if the very earth itself shifted uneasily. "We don't have a choice," Matthias said grimly. "We find refuge, we prepare, and we uncover the rest of the truth before Ray does." One by one, they moved deeper into the unknown. The tunnels twisted and sloped downward, carrying them far beneath the roots of Willowbrook. Strange murals lined the walls, depictions of beasts, battles, and celestial storms no history book had ever recorded. Here, the air grew warmer. Here, the stones hummed with a different magic. At last, they found it. A hidden hall, a sanctuary untouched by time. Massive stone pillars lined the room, each carved with runes of protection and binding. In the center stood an ancient fountain, dry but still intact, and surrounding it were remnants of what had once been a place of gathering benches, scroll holders, shattered relics of another age. Nora's breath caught. This was a refuge. Matthias nodded slowly. For them, and now for us. The villagers set to work immediately clearing debris, lighting new torches, setting up a temporary camp. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Above them, the storm of mist and darkness raged. But here, in the ancient refuge, hope stirred again, and somewhere deeper still. The guardian turned in her slumber, sensing the world calling her name once more. Hours passed. The villagers settled into the ancient hall as best they could, their exhaustion heavy, but their spirits holding fast. The old fountain at the center gave off a soft hum now, as if awakening to their presence, responding to their need. Leo, ever curious, knelt by a cracked stone chest, half buried beneath fallen debris. "Here," he called out. Matthias and Nora hurried over as Leo brushed away the dust. Inside, wrapped in a faded cloth, were brittle scrolls and fragments of old tomes, most written in the same forgotten tongue, etched onto the walls of the tunnels. Beth knelt beside them, squinting at one scroll in particular. Unlike the others, it was sealed with a silver crest, shaped like a dragon coiled around a tree. Freya's breath caught that symbol. It's the same one carved near the seal. Abigail carefully cracked the seal and unrolled the scroll. The text was old, but one passage stood out, written not in the ancient tongue, but in the old common language. "When the veil rises and the land is cloaked in shadow, the guardian shall awaken. To summon her aid, the oath of light must be spoken, lest all be lost to the darkness." A hush fell over the group. Matthias's eyes narrowed, reading the lines again and again. "The guardian," he murmured, "the protector the ancients trusted." Beth's voice was barely a whisper, the one Ray betrayed. Leo tapped the scroll, pointing to a faintly drawn diagram beside the text, depicting the seal they had seen, and above it, the silhouette of a dragon soaring into the sky. Freya stepped back, her heart pounding. A dragon sleeping beneath Willowbrook. Nora swallowed. And the oath. It's the key to waking her fully. Matthias stood tall, holding the silver amulet tightly. Then we must learn it, speak it, before Ray tears apart what little hope remains. Later, by the ancient fountain. By the flickering torchlight, the villagers gathered around the old fountain. The air was thick with the scent of stone and old magic. Beth held the scroll high, her voice steady, despite the fear curling in her gut. "Together," she said, as they once did. They closed their eyes, hearts aligned, and spoke the ancient oath aloud. "By light we are bound, by truth we stand, by courage we endure. Guardian of flame, hear our call, awaken and defend what is lost." The final word echoed through the cavern like a stone dropped into a deep well. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the fountain flared to life, pure blue water erupting from its dry basin, casting shimmering reflections across the ancient walls. The runes along the pillars blazed, forming a protective ring around the villagers. And far below, beneath layers of sealed stone and time-worn magic, a great presence stirred. Eyes deep, ancient, filled with a forgotten light, opened. Sapphire was awakening. The fountain's glow slowly dimmed, returning to a gentle, steady shimmer. The villagers stared in awe, breaths held, hearts pounding. They had done it. They had spoken the forgotten oath, and something someone had heard. But the magic did not go unnoticed. Far above, beyond the shrouded village streets, Ray howled. The mist recoiled, twisted in agony by the pulse of ancient power, and with a snarl of pure rage, Ray unleashed the shadows he commanded. From the cracks in the forest floor, from the forgotten ruins swallowed by mist, they came. Night crawlers, forest wraiths, murk sprites, grim stalkers, the creatures of Tenebrous Rift, corrupted and eager, surged toward the village and toward the tunnels. Their howls and screeches filled the air as they raced toward the entrance to the underground refuge. Meanwhile, underground. Beth staggered back from the fountain, clutching her head. "Something's coming." Freya fell to one knee, gasping as a sharp, silver light flooded her vision. "No, someone's warning us." The others stumbled as well, each of them seized by a sudden wave of visions. In their mind's eyes, they saw it. A great dragon scales shimmering with the colors of the sky at dawn. Wings spread wide, shielding the village from a churning storm of darkness. A voice, clear and strong, speaking to each of them not with words, but with purpose. Hold fast. Do not let the shadows take the heart of Willowbrook. I am with you. Matthias staggered back, clutching the amulet as it blazed with renewed strength. Leo gasped, his eyes wide. She's alive. She's awake. Before anyone could respond, a thunderous crack echoed through the tunnels, the distant sound of stone shattering at the tunnel entrance. "They're coming," Nora shouted, grabbing a fallen sword from a nearby relic shelf. The villagers scrambled into position, standing back to back beneath the glowing pillars. Outside, the first screech of a nightcrawler pierced the ancient hallways. The battle for Willowbrook was about to begin. And this time, they weren't fighting alone. Chapter 8. Reflections of Shadows. The first nightcrawler slithered into the ancient sanctuary, its body a mass of shadowy tendrils and snapping jaws, its eyes hollow voids locked onto the villagers with a hunger that could never be sated. "Hold your ground," Matthias shouted, raising the silver amulet high. The amulet's glow flared, casting a protective shimmer across the hall's entrance. The nightcrawler recoiled, hissing, its form flickering where the light touched it. More followed. Forest wraiths floated through the broken archways, their tattered forms whispering ancient curses. Merc sprites darted along the walls, sowing confusion and fear wherever their shadows landed. And in the center of it all, the villagers stood shoulder to shoulder, a fragile line of hope against the oncoming storm. Beth clutched a broken sword she had found among the ruins, her knuckles white. Leo held a rusted spear awkwardly, but determination burned in his eyes. Nora readied a pouch of enchanted herbs, whispering ancient words taught by the old herbalists. Freya, torch in hand, stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "We fight together." The creatures lunged. The clash was immediate, chaotic. Beth swung her sword, the blade slicing through a merc sprite, which burst into a puff of black smoke with an eerie shriek. Leo thrust his spear, driving a nightcrawler back toward the protective light of the amulet. Nora hurled handfuls of enchanted herbs into the air, creating shimmering barriers that slowed the wraith's advance. But for every creature they defeated, two more slipped from the mist, drawn by Ray's will. The villagers fought with everything they had, but exhaustion clawed at their limbs, doubt gnawed at their minds. Matthias staggered, a forest wraith's cold touch grazing his arm, sapping his strength. "We can't hold them," Leo shouted, and then the light changed. The fountain at the center of the hall pulsed once more, brighter, deeper, alive. A gust of warm, radiant air burst outward, sweeping through the sanctuary. The creatures shrieked in terror. Where the light touched them, their forms unraveled, dissolving into harmless wisps. Sapphire's unseen power surged through the stones, through the amulet, through the villagers themselves. Beth felt her sword grow lighter in her hands. Nora's herbs glowed softly, strengthening their protective spells. Freya's torch blazed higher, burning with a blue flame that no shadow could withstand. Matthias straightened, feeling strength pour back into his bones. "She's with us," he whispered. The villagers rallied, pushing the creatures back, driving them toward the broken tunnels from which they had come. One by one, the shadow beasts fell or fled, their cries echoing into the darkness. And when the final nightcrawler dissolved into mist, a heavy silence fell over the sanctuary once more. They had survived. Barely. But they had survived. The villagers slumped against the ancient pillars, panting, battered, but alive. Nora tended to wounds with trembling hands. Leo sketched hurried notes about the battle, his mind already racing ahead to what they would need to survive the next one. Beth sat by the fountain, staring into the glowing water. "She's watching us," Beth said quietly. "She's protecting us." Matthias joined her, setting the silver amulet down beside the fountain's edge. The runes carved into its surface shimmered faintly in the glow. "Yes," he said, "but she's not fully awake yet." Freya stepped forward, wiping soot from her face. "What happens when she is?" Matthias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared into the depths of the fountain where, just for a moment, he thought he saw a great, scaled form stirring in the shadows below. Waiting, watching, preparing. "The real battle hasn't even begun," he said at last. And above them, in the mist-choked village, Ray howled with rage, knowing his time was running out. Chapter 9. Forgotten Foundations. The villagers worked in silence, clearing away the remnants of the battle that had shaken the ancient refuge. Their bodies ached, but their spirits remained unbroken. The light of the fountain still shimmered softly, bathing the sanctuary in a quiet, protective glow. Matthias knelt by a fallen pillar, brushing away centuries of dust and debris. Beneath the rubble, he uncovered another set of carvings, this time deeper, older, more carefully hidden. He called for the others. One by one, they gathered around the newly revealed wall, torches casting flickering light across the stone. "What is it?" Beth asked, her voice hushed. Matthias traced the carvings with his fingertips, his expression grave. "The truth," he whispered, "the truth about Willowbrook and what lies beneath it. The true origins of Willowbrook." The carvings told a story unlike any they had heard. Long before the village was founded, the land had been a battlefield, a place where light and darkness clashed. A mighty guardian, born of flame and starlight, had descended from the heavens to protect the realm. A dragon, a spirit of balance, a protector known to the ancients as the Heart of Dawn. She was not merely a beast of power, but a being of wisdom and mercy. She sealed away the darkness that threatened to consume the world, locking it beneath layers of enchanted stone, creating the foundation upon which Willowbrook would later rise. Over generations, the villagers forgot the truth. The guardian became a legend, then a myth, then a whisper in the old songs. Until now. Freya stepped closer to the mural, eyes wide. "The guardian, she's Sapphire." Matthias nodded solemnly. "And Ray, he was once her chosen protector." The revelation hit them like a blow. Beth's voice trembled. "He betrayed her." "No," Matthias said, shaking his head. "Not at first. He believed he could control the darkness. He thought he could protect the village by using its power." He turned to the others, the weight of history heavy in his voice. "But darkness does not bend to will. It bends will to itself." A forgotten oath. Leo found another scroll tucked behind the fallen stones, a fragment of an ancient contract, marked with the same dragon crest as the fountain. He read aloud, "To guard the flame, to shield the dawn, to stand against the veil, we pledge our souls to the guardian until the stars fall and the seas turn to stone." It was an oath, a forgotten oath of the village's original founders, those who had pledged their lives to defend the guardian and keep the darkness sealed away. Freya clenched her fists. "We're not just defending Willowbrook." Beth nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "We're defending the very soul of this land." Matthias looked around at the tired, battered, but determined faces of his companions. "We are the last of the guardians," he said, "and we will not fail." As the villagers prepared to renew the ancient oath, far above, Ray's rage boiled into a storm. The final clash between light and shadow was drawing near, and this time, the true heart of Willowbrook would not be so easily broken. Chapter 10. Foretold Fate. The ancient refuge lay in an uneasy stillness. The villagers had bound their wounds and rekindled the fires, but a heavy tension hung in the air like a breath, waiting to be exhaled. Beth sat by the fountain, the ancient scroll clutched in her lap. She stared into the glowing waters, her mind spinning with the revelations of the Guardian, the darkness, and their forgotten oath. Across the hall, Matthias, Leo, Nora, Freya, and the others prepared for whatever would come next. They didn't have to wait long. The vision. Without warning, the fountain flared, light bursting outward in a radiant pulse that illuminated every corner of the sanctuary. Beth gasped as the light surrounded her, blinding and warm. She stumbled backward, but the others seemed frozen, unmoving, as if caught outside of time. A voice, clear and powerful, filled her mind. Child of the new dawn. Beth's heart raced. The voice was neither male nor female, ancient, deep, filled with a kindness and strength she had never known. The seal weakens, the shadows rise. You are the last hope of Willowbrook. Images flashed before Beth's eyes. Ray, cloaked in mist, leading an army of twisted creatures toward the village gates. Villagers, standing together with torches, blades, and courage, defending their home. And above it all, a mighty dragon, her scales shimmering with the light of the stars, soaring through the stormy skies, sapphire, the guardian, their guardian. The warning. The vision shifted. Beth saw Willowbrook swallowed in shadow. She heard the anguished cries of those who fell. She saw the fountain cracked and broken, the tunnels flooded with darkness. But then, a light. Faint at first, growing stronger. It was the villagers bound by their oath, standing together against the void, and at their side, the Guardian reborn. The voice spoke once more. Stand together, or fall divided. Protect the heart of the village, and you shall awaken the dawn. The light faded. Beth collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. The others rushed to her side. What happened? Freya cried. Beth looked up, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. She spoke to me, Beth whispered. The Guardian, Sapphire. Matthias gripped her shoulder. What did she say? Beth stood, holding the ancient scroll high. She said our fate isn't sealed yet. We have a chance to save Willowbrook, but we must stand together, all of us. Above, hidden in the mist, Ray stirred. The visions had not gone unnoticed. His corrupted form shifted uneasily in the shadows. She's waking, he growled. His claws dug into the cracked earth. But it won't matter. He would tear Willowbrook apart before the Guardian rose again, and the final storm was coming. Chapter 11. Gathering Storm. The halls beneath Willowbrook buzzed with a new urgency. The villagers had no illusions now Ray would come. The whispers in the mist had grown louder. The earth trembled more often, and the dark creatures lurking beyond the sanctuary were gathering. The final clash wasn't a question of if anymore, only when. Preparing for war. In the ancient refuge, Matthias stood atop a cracked pillar, rallying the villagers. We cannot face him alone, he said, voice strong despite the fatigue in his bones. But together we have a chance. Beth, scroll in hand, led teams of villagers in reinforcing the tunnels, using ancient runes of protection they had uncovered in the hidden murals. Freya, Nora, and Leo organized supplies, stockpiling herbs, torches, enchanted stones, and anything they could salvage from the ruins. Gareth, the blacksmith, and Tobias, the carpenter, reforged old weapons and fashioned new ones from scavenged relics. Even the children helped, carrying water, mending torn cloaks, and scrawling old symbols of hope on the walls. Above them, the mist thickened, swallowing the sun. The village streets grew eerily quiet. Only the crows remained, circling like restless spirits, a glimpse of the enemy. As Beth worked near one of the side tunnels, she froze. In the distance, deep in the shadows, she saw them. Figures, not just night crawlers and wraiths. Shapes twisted beyond recognition, once human, once animal, now nothing but nightmares given form. Ray was not sending mere creatures anymore. He was summoning the broken remnants of Tenebrous Rift itself. Lost souls bound to the Whisping Veil, desperate and hollow. Beth's heart clenched. "We don't have much time," she whispered. She raced back to the others, her voice urgent. "They're coming. Not just beasts, corrupted souls, lost ones." Matthias's jaw tightened. "Then we stand ready." The last refuge. By nightfall, the sanctuary had become a fortress. Barricades of stone and old wood blocked the wider tunnels. Traps carefully crafted by Leo and the children lined the main passages. And at the heart of it all, the fountain still glowed. Sapphire's spirit pulsed steadily from within, stronger now than ever before. The villagers gathered for one final meeting. Beth stood at the center, her voice clear and unwavering. "We are the last light in this storm," she said. "We defend the heart of Willowbrook. We fight not for ourselves alone, but for every soul that ever called this land home." The villagers bowed their heads, silent oaths passing between them. Matthias raised the silver amulet, its light blazing in the dimness. "Together," he said. The others echoed, "Together." A rumble shook the earth beneath them. The first blow against the outer tunnels rang out like a drum of war. Ray had arrived. The storm had begun. Chapter 12. Guardian's Light. The first wave struck just before midnight. The barricades shook as night crawlers hurled themselves against the stone and wood, their shrieks echoing down the ancient tunnels. The villagers held firm, bows ready, torches lit, spells whispered on trembling lips. Matthias stood at the front, the silver amulet blazing in his hand, a beacon in the darkness. "Hold," he commanded. The creatures snarled and clawed, but the villagers fought like lions, driven by fear, yes, but also by hope. For every shadow that fell, another rose to take its place. It seemed endless, and above it all, Ray's presence loomed, felt but unseen, his hatred seeping through the mist like poison. Beth fought with everything she had, her blade flashing in the dim light. Beside her, Freya's enchanted torch flared higher, burning away the mist wherever it touched. But it wasn't enough. The shadows kept coming. The villagers began to falter. The awakening. Just as the last barricade splintered under the weight of the enemy, a tremor rocked the sanctuary, a low, rumbling pulse that vibrated through the stone itself. The fountain flared. The light surged. Every torch, every rune, every scrap of magic the villagers had summoned, it all answered the call. The earth split open at the center of the sanctuary, and from the glowing fountain, a great form began to rise, a roar deep, ancient, and filled with a power that shook the very tunnels echoed through the underground halls. From the heart of the light, a shape emerged, vast wings stretching wide, brushing the ceiling with shimmering feathers of flame and starlight, scales that glistened like 1,000 dawns, eyes the color of the first morning sky, piercing, wise, and filled with sorrow and hope. Sapphire, the guardian of Willowbrook, had awakened. Guardian's Light. The moment Sapphire's eyes opened fully, the mist recoiled like a wounded animal. The corrupted creatures shrieked, their forms unraveling where her light touched them. Ray himself, hidden beyond the mist, howled in rage, a sound twisted and broken. Beth stared up in awe, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She's real," she whispered. "She's real." Sapphire spoke, not with words, but with her presence, her spirit flooding their hearts. "Fear not, children of the dawn. As long as hope endures, so too shall light. Stand, fight, and I shall stand with you." Strength returned to the villagers like a fire rekindled. The injured stood. The weary lifted their blades again. The hopeless remembered what it meant to believe. Sapphire reared back, and with a single mighty roar, unleashed a wave of pure light through the tunnels, cleansing the darkness, sealing the breaches, and driving Ray's forces into retreat. The battle for Willowbrook had not yet truly begun, but the village had a protector once more, and with her they would not fall. Far above, in the twisted mists of Tenebrous Rift, Ray watched, broken, furious, afraid, but not defeated. Not yet. The final battle had merely been delayed. The true war for Willowbrook was still to come. End of Chapter 12, and the end of Willowbrook Adventure, Book 3, Secrets Beneath the Village, Epilogue. Beneath the cracked skies and shifting mists, Willowbrook still stood. Its people, battered but unbroken, had reclaimed their forgotten strength. Bound by an ancient oath, shielded by a guardian's light, they had defied the creeping darkness for one more night. But far beyond the village walls, the storm gathered. Ray, once a protector, now a creature of wrath and sorrow, prepared his final assault. He would not rest, he would not retreat, and next time he would bring all the fury of Tenebrous Rift down upon them. In the shadows of a new dawn, a single truth remained. The battle for Willowbrook had only just begun. Coming soon, Willowbrook Adventure, Book 4. The battle for Willowbrook, the final stand, begins.